Of all the ways ghosts can appear to us, few situations can be as terrifying as a soul materializing before you whilst you are driving. For many, driving in the dark is an unwelcome, unnerving prospect in itself. But imagine, if you will, the pulse-raising moment something or indeed someone not of this world steps out in front of you. Some of the most famously haunted roads in England lies in Kent, situated on the road amongst Bluebell Hill. For decades now, distraught drivers have come forward to report sightings believed to be of one Judith Langham, a beautiful young bride-to-be who was involved in a grisly car crash on the day of her wedding, killing her instantly. Judith tragically perished on the 19th of November 1965 at the tender age of 22. What a cruel end for such a young, promising life just starting out in the world. Since her untimely passing, she has been seen frequently, always wearing a vintage-style wedding dress and veil where she seems to revel in shocking unsuspecting drivers who quickly descend into panic, believing themselves to have hit her. Yet, as they rush out of their vehicles to her aid, she's gone without a trace. One horrifying encounter of Judith came courtesy of Liz Cummings, an architect from Surrey, in 2004. I'd been visiting my uncle when, on driving home alone in the pitch black, I had a sudden sensation that something wasn't right somehow. Things just seemed to be creeping up on me. I vividly recall turning up my Rod Stewart CD for some sort of comfort, reassurance, familiarity. I was edgy, nervous. As I reached to change the track on the CD, I distinctly felt a freezing cold, icy hand resting itself across my right hand on the wheel, trying with shocking force to grab it. Terrified, I swerved to the left. Mercifully, there was nobody in the other lane. I felt someone sat beside me in the passenger seat. I knew painfully well that I wasn't alone in my car and decided, as calmly as I could muster, to pull over at my next opportunity. At that exact moment of reasoning, my entire body seized up at the image of a screaming bride came hurtling toward my windscreen. I slammed on my brake and the car came to a screeching halt in the middle of the road. I was thrown into blind panic, hit the hazard lights and leapt out of my car, convinced I'd careered into this poor woman. I looked all around the car with my torch, and to my complete astonishment, nobody was there. Moments later, a car appeared behind me and the kind chap got out and saw the state I was in. He comforted me. I was hysterical and looked around in search of this bride, but again, there was nothing. Nobody. Everything from then on went into a slowed-down haze. I can't even recall how I got home. I can still see her face, mouth sneering at me, almost hating, her complexion clear but tinged with this awful sort of green. She was so angry. Her face is etched in my memory, and I see it a lot in my nightmares. Despite her frightening appearance, she had the most beautiful of eyes. An abhorrent account, certainly, and one that is continually repeated by many. In the November of 1992, driver Ian Sharp was heading up the A229 from Sussex to Kent when a lady dressed entirely in white, with beautiful eyes, stepped out in front of his car, slipping under the front wheels. Identically to Mrs. Cummings' account, Mr. Sharp stopped the car, convinced he'd killed the poor woman, but was rendered gobsmacked to discover nothing there at all. Such hideous accounts continue to flood in, each as painfully similar as the last, all describing the same spectre dressed in her white finery with captivatingly beautiful eyes. It seems Judith just can't or won't come to terms with being cheated out of her promising future and continues to present herself to the innocent as they drive by, blissfully unaware. Another widely reported haunted area is the A636, Wiltshire, England. Along one particular stretch known as Sally in the Woods is the infamous spot where a young girl was hit and killed by a car when she inexplicably ran into the road. The girl proves to be a very vengeful spirit who is believed to present herself to oblivious motorists as they pass through. One report comes from Mr. Wells, who encountered the lost girl back in 2012. It was peeing it down with rain that night. It wasn't late, around 9 o'clock-ish. I'd been driving home from a job when I suddenly caught sight of a young girl, dressed normally, jeans and long coat as it was pretty cold. She was stood 10 feet or so away. I thought she was a passenger of a breakdown initially, so as I drove by, I looked to see whether I could assist when she comes sprinting out in front of me. I slammed my brakes on and flew out of the car. "God! Oh God!" I remember saying. I was sweating like mad. I looked around the car and grabbed my torch. Worried she was lying far from the car because of the impact, I scoured the area. Nothing. I remember swearing out of fear. I got back in the car, started the engine and drove on traumatized. 3 or so minutes later, the same girl appeared in my passenger seat. I was seriously scared and she stared at me, longing to speak for what seemed like eternity. I pulled over, heart racing. I have high blood pressure and was worried about a heart attack or stroke at this point. She was looking directly at me, no doubt about it. She could see me. I asked her what she wanted, who she was, and she just stared, motionless. Suddenly, my car filled up with this noise. You know when you're tuning a radio, you get all sorts of quick judders of music and people's voices. I heard that. Voices of men, women, all talking at speed. My radio was off. My engine was off. There was this horrible whispering voice as I sat there, welded to the chair, looking at this kid. It was a woman's whisper and it said, "Come on now. Come home. We're here." Her mouth went up slightly in the corner and with that, she disappeared out of it. She just went. I was in total disbelief and I don't mind telling you, I've never been so shaken up in my life. I started the car, hands still shaking on the cold wheel and drove off home. When I told my wife the next morning, for some reason, it made her cry. It would seem people really do continue to haunt the places that claimed their lives, but just why is this? Could it be sheer revenge? Malevolence in the case of Judith, the aggrieved bride, destined to remain a spectre in this mortal world for eternity? Cursing those who simply exist because she never accomplished her dreams? Could the mysterious girl have taken her own life in desperation? Believed by many to be sinful, is this her punishment from the afterlife? To see and be seen, but never to speak, never to unburden herself of her apparent misery? We will likely never know, but one thing's for sure. If you find yourself travelling along either of these roads, it's probably best not to do so alone. As these cases have taught us, you won't be alone on your journey for too long. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, but all the while, don't have nightmares.